A Miami-Dade County judge shoots down the legislature's revised version of the self-defense law.
Public health crisis. Opioid overdoses are killing thousands in Florida, and the numbers are rising.
Suing for smokable pot, the man behind the medical marijuana law takes the smoking ban to court, and we will take it to the roundtable.
Good morning. So much on the plate today, and we begin with a stunning court ruling by a South Florida judge against a revised Stand Your Ground law.
Since 2005, defendants in criminal cases making a Stand Your Ground argument had to show evidence that they acted in self-defense to avoid a trial. But as of July 1st, lawmakers shifted that burden of proof to prosecutors, and now prosecutors have to prove it wasn't self-defense. This week, Miami-Dade Judge Milton Hirsch ruled that only the state Supreme Court, not the legislature, has the power to change the Stand Your Ground law. If Judge Hirsch is upheld on appeal, it will certainly be a rebuke to state lawmakers and a boon to state prosecutors.
We want to put this all in context with our guest today. Jeffrey Weiner is a criminal defense attorney in Miami, and he's former president of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Tara Faenza, who is an attorney in private practice now, is a former prosecutor with the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office. Great to have you both. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for asking.
Good morning, Tara. And Jeff, let me begin by asking you, you have been practicing criminal defense since what, 1974? You are
right.
An experienced and well-respected defense attorney. So what's wrong with making the prosecution have to prove the self-defense claim?
There's nothing wrong with it, and that's how it should be. And the legislature was correct. However, I think Judge Milton Hirsch was correct too, because technically he's right.
Technically in what way?
Here's the situation. Right now, if somebody claims self-defense and they are not successful, they have to go through a trial, which is the way it was before Stand Your Ground.
Right.
Now with the Stand Your Ground, when the defendant, the person charged, says, I acted in self-defense and shows enough evidence to make it a real claim, the state now has to prove, if it can, at a pre-trial hearing that they have the responsibility, it's called the burden of proof. They have to show by clear and convincing evidence that the claim of Stand Your Ground or of valid self-defense is not right. That's how it should be. Why should somebody be forced to go to trial?
Doesn't the defense, as it were, get two bites at the apple, as you lawyers like to say? You get to see the state's case at a pretrial hearing, then you get to go, if you go to trial.
It's no big deal to see the state's case. The cases are never an ambush. Under the law in Florida, both sides know all the evidence before the trial begins. So that is not a valid argument. Yeah. But what's amazing to me is that we have the National Rifle Association, we have criminal defense lawyers, we have public defenders all wanting this new change in the law.
Well, the new change in the law, I mean, just to be clear, what Judge Hirsch struck down was the burden of proof issue. The law, as it stands since 2005, has been that the defendant wanting a Stand Your Ground immunity has to go before the judge and say, here's why I'm entitled to it. And this new change, as of July 1st, that the judge struck down, means the prosecution has to, that the new law was that the prosecution had the burden, and Judge Milton Hirsch says, no, that can't be. But he said so, Tara, because in the judge's words, it's the state lawmakers can't do that. They have no jurisdiction. Only the state Supreme Court could. Is he right about that?
Yes. And in fact, I agree with Mr. Weiner, Jeffrey, in his analysis of the order. And I think what we always have to remember now, of course, I'm former state, but I'm now a criminal defense attorney, so I'm going to agree quite a bit with Mr. Weiner. The fact is the state always has the burden of proof. Always. And you are innocent until convicted, until it is proven. And I stretch it out like Mr. Weiner does, beyond into the exclusion of any and all reasonable doubt.
Well, actually, the burden of proof standard changed, did it not?
It did.
In the 2005, it was what, clear
preponderance of the evidence.
And now it's clear and convincing, which is a higher standard.
So without it being technical, the bottom line is preponderance is 51%. Clear and convincing is much more than that, and beyond a reasonable doubt, the standard in a trial is the highest standard of proof.
Yeah. Tara, let me ask you.
And when I'm referring, just to clarify, when I'm referring to the standard of proof, I'm referring to in a case. The state always has the standard. And when we're looking as the general public, watching the news or talking to friends and family and watching a celebrity case, a lot of times, well, gosh, you know what? That guy's guilty. I can see it from here and there. Or, you know, why don't they prove that they didn't do it? Because the fact is the state has to prove it. It's not someone saying, nana, nana, boo, boo, you have to prove it. No, that's actually the law. So when it shifted that the defense had to provide a prima facie case of a self-defense immunity, then Mr. Weiner is correct. Yes, the state had to come back by a preponderance of the evidence, which is a civil standard, to show that they weren't entitled to that immunity. And that's now been raised as a result of this to clear and convincing evidence.
So how do you then counter the argument that this kind of immunity just makes it open season on anyone with a gun to say, oh, you know, it was self-defense? I mean, it's so broad now.
Well, we get back to politics. You know, when I graduated law school, I thought all the judges followed the law, or at least tried to follow the law, or what they thought was the law. The reality is, as we know, whether it's Bush versus Gore and everyday life, when judges are elected, politics is part of it. And yes, the push now by the NRA, by many of the Republican legislatures, is to give gun owners more rights. And that's one of the issues. But may I just say, it hurt me greatly, even though as a defense lawyer, I like the new law, to hear Judge Hirsch criticized for this opinion. It's just not right. He's a brilliant judge. He's as fair as can be. And I believe he is correct. Now, the legislature can cure it very easily, but we'll see what happens when it goes up on appeal.
The prime sponsor of the bill doesn't think it needs to be cured at all. And if I may agree with you about Judge Hirsch, obviously I'm not a lawyer, but he is a brilliant guy.
He's great.
And he is not afraid to get out there with a ruling that has, you know, disagreed with other major rulings. Tara, let me ask you though, prosecutors throughout the state are unanimous in saying this is a terrible thing. It's going to allow some gangbangers and other people who shoot other people to be able to get off. Okay. Why not? Isn't that true?
Well, it's interesting the language used, gangbangers and criminals. What about people who commit murder that wear a badge? What about people like in the Philan Castro case where I watched the video? The gentleman said, I need to get my wallet, and he advised that he had a concealed weapons license, and he's murdered. I'm going to use that word because it's strong, but I believe it to be true. He's murdered in his car. And what does that mean? It means the person that the NRA is protecting. And by the way, I haven't heard them coming out in support of Philan Castro. I haven't seen that at all. So we're really, in my view, talking about, to some extent, a race issue. But when he's sitting there being murdered in front of his fiance and his daughter...
Well, it was an awful... excuse me, everyone agrees it was a horrific instance of what appears to be police abuse. But back to the question of prosecutors in Florida, how can they uniformly say this is going to make it harder to put bad guys away?
Well, this order, yes, it absolutely, without Judge Hirsch coming in and saying the clear and convincing evidence standard remains, yes, of course it makes it harder for them.
So where does it go? Where does it go now? Does Judge Hirsch's ruling apply statewide until such time as somebody takes it to the Supreme Court?
No, here's the situation. There are circuit judges throughout Florida. Circuit judges are the trial-level felony judges. When one judge, such as Judge Hirsch, issues an order, it applies only in his courtroom. It doesn't have any precedential value. Other judges are not bound to apply it. They can if they wish to. Now what's going to happen is his ruling is going to be appealed to the 3rd District Court of Appeals. That's the state appellate court for the Miami area, right by the FIU campus.
Sure.
And a 3-judge panel will then hear it and then rule whether he is correct or not.
And so my biggest question, I think, when we were looking into this whole change in stand your ground is you look up the 716 laws, is that the statutes governing justifiable use of force?
Right.
Why is stand your ground even necessary? The change in the burden of proof even necessary when it spells out right there in the statutes anyway that self-defense is a valid defense, and if you can prove that, Why is all of this even
Self-defense has
necessary?
always been valid, but this is the power of lobbyists getting to the state legislators and getting this passed. This did away with what's called the duty to retreat. It was always in the law that if you can avoid violence, you must do so, but you always had the right to self-defense.
Right, you had to step back, and what Stand Your Ground passed in 2005 said, did it not?
No duty to retreat.
No duty to retreat. You can just simply defend yourself right there. Well, we will see what happens with Judge Hirsch's ruling, but Jeff, Tara, great to have you come in.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
Have a great morning.
All right, when we come back, Florida's opioid addiction crisis. It's getting attention, but it's also getting worse. Stay with us. This week, a call for more money and action to staunch an opioid drug epidemic that has come back stronger and deadlier, even since countless pill mills were shut down years ago.
A report from Miami-Dade County's Opioid Addiction Task Force focuses on the devastating and costly effects of opiates like heroin and then new synthetics like fentanyl. Here's how deadly these are. 14 people die every day in Florida from an opioid overdose. More than 2,300 Floridians have died of opioids so far this year, and it's estimated some 5,300 Floridians are going to OD by the end of this year. That is more death than highway accidents or gunfire.
Russell Benford is the Miami-Dade deputy mayor, and he serves on that opioid addiction task force. We welcome him to the conversation this morning. Lisa Franklin is a clinical outreach coordinator who has overcome a personal battle with drug addiction, and she founded the Collegiate Recovery Community at the University of Miami. And Raymond Estefania is co-founder and executive director of Family Recovery Specialists and the former director of South Miami Hospital's Adolescent Addiction Treatment Program. That is where we begin the conversation today. Thank you so much.
Great to have you all come in.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Raymond, this crisis is not new to you or to anyone at this table, but to a lot of us, seeing these numbers as we did this past week are stunning. How did this crisis get so bad?
Well, you know, Michael, I think we all remember several years ago when we had the issue here in South Florida of the pain clinics.
Right.
A lot of the people that become addicted to heroin and other opiates, you know, started out
on Vicodin,
yeah,
Oxycontin.
Absolutely. They started out sometimes with a legitimate medical problem that needed, you know, they needed pain treatment, and we had this proliferation of pain clinics in South Florida that were just really handing out these substances, very dangerous addictive substances. Those are closed now, or at least most of them are, right? The federal government got involved and really took action against.
And the state government.
And the state government as well. But you know, a lot of those people that were seeking these substances in those pain clinics are now getting those substances on the street.
And how much more dangerous can that ever be?
Well, very dangerous, right? Because we're hearing in the news all the time about the overdose deaths, right? And you know, heroin and things like that. This drug fentanyl that ends up, you know, getting sort of put into the synthetic drug that gets put into the heroin and sold. And you just don't know what you're getting, right? The person who's using it doesn't know exactly what they're using, and so it's very dangerous.
You know, you were just looking at some video, and maybe we can look at more of a Local 10 investigation into how first responders in South Florida find themselves in a position of administering anti-withdrawal drugs to overcome this addiction. Russell Benford, this task force that the county has come out with a report this week, highlight for us what, I mean, this was a deep dive by an impressive panel of health and social services people. What did you find?
It was stunning, Glenna. First and foremost, as you mentioned, with respect to emergency responders, we really focused on two things. First was for the folks that are addicted, treatment services. You know, we wanted to highlight what facilities. We have about 20 facilities in Miami-Dade County that are available to our residents.
And I'm
that
sure
can seek
in
out.
Broward there is a similar.
There's several more. And then the other half was really with respect to law enforcement. A couple of years ago, the state legislature increased the penalty for heroin and cocaine. So that if someone is arrested that's selling that drug, they can be charged with murder if someone dies from it. This year, the state legislature increased the penalties for people that are caught selling fentanyl and carfentanil to include manslaughter charges, and we're going to work to increase those penalties of murder as well. The folks that are selling this poison, we need to get them off the street, and we need to lock them up for a very long time.
Excuse me, Russell. Lissa, you have worked with our terrific reporter, Amy Viteri, who has done these reports, gone with EMTs out on the street, and we just saw a video, maybe we'll see it again, of a couple who were in a car down by Jackson Memorial Hospital who simply went unconscious because they had taken heroin. Now, you know, when you see this, you kind of think to yourself, and there were children in the car, how can people do this? What is so motivating about the need for a drug that you put your own life at risk and put the life of your children at risk?
At the end stage of this, it's not, the obsession and the compulsion is such that you're not thinking about anything else, you're just trying not to die. And nobody uses with the intent of overdosing, they're just trying not to get sick. And that's one of the really great reasons that naloxone's so readily available. Same with the public health emergency that was declared, but I was in a situation even as soon as the 4th of July. I thought I was hit by someone and they thought they hit me as well, so they pulled over. They apologized for driving erratically. They were just trying to find naloxone because the 2 pharmacies they had been to were not carrying it. I had it with me, and at that point I gave it to them. I gave them the Broward 211 list of local resources. So even at this point, with all the attention, it's still not as available as it needs to be.
All right, naloxone is the generic name for, I guess the brand name is Narcan. Is it not? I've read that this costs about $50 a dose, and the EMTs in Broward County, Miami-Dade County, City of Miami, every law enforcement department, every fire rescue department has just had to step up the amount of Narcan they administer every day. Is that right, Russell?
Yes, Michael. One of the things that's shocking is with respect to Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, in 2016, our fire department deployed Narcan 1,200 times.
Oh, wow.
That is 100 times a month, Michael, 3 times a day in Miami-Dade County. For 2017, we're trending a 20% increase in the use of Narcan by our fire rescue personnel. So we talk about the number of people that die every year. One important thing to look at is how many times we're administering Narcan and saving folks' lives, and those numbers are astronomical. They're continuing to grow.
Well, I have to say, Ray, what about these people who have overdosed a number of times and yet continue to use? What is the prospect for rehabilitation if they are taking heroin with fentanyl and just are living and, you know, get revived from overdosing and then they go back to use again? Well, how do you get them straight? How do you get them
Michael,
clean?
you know, treatment really does work. We know this. The problem is that a lot of these people, many of them can't access treatment. There's no funding for it. They've maybe been to treatment. They've exhausted. They don't have health insurance.
How about Medicaid? Can they get
Medicaid sometimes will cover treatment. You know, I think there needs to be more funding for that as well. Treatment works. Listen, this is an illness. It's a disease, as Lissa said earlier, and people have lost control. They've lost their ability to really understand what's happening to them. Their brain has been hijacked. You know, they just don't have the ability to make these decisions, and we have to provide them effective, affordable treatment that they can access readily.
You know, and as we talk about exactly this topic, I just want to put an exclamation point on the end of a sentence here, is that when we talk about addicts, we're not talking about dark alleys with people who, you know, shady characters. No, I mean, Lissa, I'm so floored that you are so public as coming out as such an advocate with your own personal experiences. Yeah. But the demographic of addiction to opioids is the person standing next to you wherever you are.
Oh yeah, it doesn't discriminate. And it's really easy when talking about it too to immediately go to think of like the young adult heroin addict, but the #1 population overdosing and dying in Florida right now are the Medicare recipients. Whoa. So it's somebody's grandparent.
Older people are now overdosing?
Yep.
Well, where did they begin? With a pain medication for genuine pain, then they got into Vicodin or Oxycontin, and then they moved on from there?
I can't say that with certainty because each person is different. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, Michael, with respect to Miami-Dade County, the medical examiner provides data on the people who actually die from overdoses. In Miami-Dade County, the number one demographic for users of the drug are white males, white non-Hispanic males between the ages of 25 and 35. They are 3 times more likely to use heroin as Hispanics, and 4 times more likely to use than African Americans. But as Alyssa said, one of the fastest growing demographics are seniors between the ages of 45 and 65. So it does affect everyone in our community.
Yeah. You know, in May was when the governor declared opioids a public health crisis, and we will pick that up when we come right back into. We are back discussing Florida's opioid crisis, and before the break we talked about how the governor, Rick Scott, has declared a public health emergency in May, and that freed up some federal money. There's $38 million plus in the state budget now addressing this, but it appears, Ray, that most of that is going toward the prison system and anti-withdrawal and anti-addiction drugs for the prison system. Is that appropriate, and will that advance what the state is trying to accomplish?
Well, I think it certainly helps, but we need to really appropriate some funds for treatment too, for the general population. I mean, you know, in Miami-Dade County, if you don't have health insurance and you don't have resources, it becomes very difficult for you to access addiction treatment.
Well, that was part of the task force report. I mean, what does the county, Russell Benford, do with as far as funding and attention?
Absolutely.
Is there enough?
One of the interesting things, in 2016, our own Senator Garcia sponsored State Bill 12, which requires a coordinated approach to mental health treatment and substance abuse treatment. That goes into effect July 1 of this year. So Miami-Dade County has a plan. Mayor Carlos Jimenez has allocated an additional $1 million in his proposed budget to provide additional resources for the intake of folks that have mental health and the co-occurrence of substance abuse treatment facilities. But as you talked about, one of the big areas that we need to increase funding is treatment beds. So the county provides that through our Community Action Human Services Department, and there are 20 facilities in Miami-Dade County, including the Veterans Administration, that do provide those services. But as time goes,
enough beds?
There are not enough beds. As we talked about, you have thousands of users in Miami-Dade County. Yeah. So as time goes on, you will see an increase in funding dedicated towards treatment beds. And we talked about, as soon as people get that dose of Narcan, as soon as they enter a hospital, as soon as they encounter a first responder, the key is to be able to get them into a treatment bed right away so that they don't go back into the community.
And a lot of them, I'm sure, are going to resist. Alyssa, you were a founder out at the University of Miami of the Collegiate Recovery Community, U-Recovery. Tell us a little bit about that and what you did and how successful you were.
U-Recovery is a collegiate recovery community, and what a collegiate recovery community is a peer-led group of students in recovery on college campuses. There's over 250 right now across the country, and actually this coming week there's a national conference in DC, but what it does is it provides a safe and supportive infrastructure within the university for students in recovery to have a normalized college experience while having fun, without the use of drugs and alcohol.
And you're working at FAU right now, are you not?
I work at Life of Purpose Treatment. We're an academically focused substance use disorder treatment center on FAU's campus. But traditionally, people have to stop going to college to receive residential treatment. And the way that our model is set up, you can attend college while receiving residential treatment.
Is there enough front end attacking this program? It seems like there's the money and the efforts are geared toward what happens when people are addicted, when people are, getting into trouble. Should there be, or is there, more front end, whether it be on the criminal side, attacking users or possessors or sellers of things like fentanyl, or people, I guess like your program, to stop people from even becoming addicted with awareness? Is there a front end that we're not doing?
Glenna, I think if you really look at what's going to solve the addiction problem over the long term, prevention is really key. We really do need to be doing more work on the front end with children. right, with adolescents, with teenagers.
Yeah.
We know that addiction is a developmental disease. You know, these adults that are addicted at 40 and 50 years old, most of them became addicted when they were young, when they were teenagers. And unfortunately, not enough resources are being put towards prevention. A lot of parents, unfortunately, don't think this is going to happen to them. And so these kids, these teenagers start experimenting with drugs when they're 14, 15, 16 years old. And then the parents often don't act until they're 25 and now they're addicted to heroin.
Yeah, Ray, you have worked with teenage kids with addiction problems. Is marijuana a gateway drug, or can some kids just, and adults, say, yeah, I'm going to smoke some weed and that's it, and then they stop, or do they move on to more powerful drugs?
Michael, marijuana is clearly not heroin or cocaine. It's not as dangerous as some other drugs or as addictive as other drugs. But the marijuana of today is not the marijuana of 25 or 30 years ago. It is a different drug. It is more dangerous. It is more addictive. And the problem, again, goes back to with children. It's about brain development. When kids start experimenting with any drug at 14, 15, 16 years old, their chances of becoming addicted are much greater than if they waited until they were adults. So sure, adults can have a casual relationship with marijuana. It's been my experience that teenagers cannot.
Can I ask a quick personal question to you?
Sure.
Was your addiction that you overcame, did that begin as recreational drug use, or were you prescribed pills that you then became addicted to?
It was a little bit of both. It started as recreational alcohol use. I was prescribed opiates through various sports injuries in high school. But what got me to where I am today is my family support. I had access to a safe and supportive therapeutic curriculum and recovery support services post-treatment.
That's great.
Well, congratulations on your continuing recovery, and thanks for coming on and being
Thank you for having
so
us.
Candid. Russell Binford, always great to have you come on.
Always.
Thank you, Michael.
You were
Glenna.
a terrific guest, Ray. Thank you,
Michael.
for
Thank you,
your
Glenna.
expertise.
Up next, we discuss the big news of the week with our roundtable. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Let's get right to our Powerhouse Roundtable. Boy, we've got a good one for you today. Ed Pizzoli is president of the Tripp Scott Law Firm. Can we show Mr. Pizzoli? There he is. He's an active voice in the Republican Party, both in South Florida and in Washington.
Andrea Robinson is a veteran journalist, editor, and reporter with the Miami Times and formerly with the Miami Herald.
Marlon Hill, an attorney with the Hamilton, Miller, and Berthasell firm, past president, Caribbean Bar Association, radio talk show host, civic activist, man of many parts.
Where are those hats today? Welcome.
Marlon, this ruling on Stand Your Ground by Judge Hirsch, what do you think?
Well, we'll see. I think the District Court of Appeals over there by FIU, we took our kids over there to see them. Chief Judge Suarez will appoint 3 to review the decision, whether or not the legislature should be writing this law or whether or not the Supreme Court should be writing this law. And that's really what it's all about, even though the gun rights advocates will fight over this issue.
So interesting that it's in the court now as a process story when it really is, it began as a lobbying story and a statutory story. Andrea Robinson, there is a burden of proof question here. What's your take on who has the burden of proof? Who should?
Of course, in any case, prosecutors should have the burden of proof. When it comes to stand your ground, the way this law was written, I think that the defense really, if this is what you want to say, you should be able to prove why you should go to trial and be able to use this. Because we are in a society now where guns are prevalent. People are angry, and anybody will say, well, I was in fear of my life.
The 2 guys who were having a gunfight at the Pork and Beans Project in Liberty City 10 years ago, when Sherdavia Jenkins died, they both claimed Stand Your Ground. I mean, these are drug dealers, and this little 10-year-old girl, 9-year-old girl, gets shot to death, and these gangbangers are claiming, oh, I was just protecting myself.
But again, that still speaks to what I mean. I think that with all these guns, honestly, stand your ground with guns, I don't buy it. I personally don't. In this case, that becomes, when Sherdavia is killed, that becomes a whole nother issue. So anything that's going to protect people people who are irresponsible with guns, I don't think they need another layer of protection. I don't.
You know what? That's an interesting example, and I think stand your ground does not apply
I don't think
when you are committing a crime.
I don't think it's applicable.
Yeah.
I don't think it's applicable then. But people are using this, so you have just, I don't know if he's going to do it, but in Pennsylvania, the other week, this new graduate was driving, and some guy, they get into this road race thing, he pulls out a gun and just shoots her. Now, is he going to say, I was standing my ground? That's what's been happening lately.
Ed, what's your take on this?
Look, the idea here was to shift the burden of proof. That's what the new law did. It shifted the burden of proof to from a defendant who was trying to claim stand your ground to the prosecution that, once the claim was made, that there was an absence of facts around that. And what troubled me more was the standard of clear and convincing evidence. That's a whole different thing. I mean, you had guests on before about what that burden means. That is a near impossible burden, especially at a pretrial. Yeah, it's a tough burden.
You know what we didn't talk about was all of this extra workload now on prosecutors.
Yes.
I mean, prosecutors are not they're publicly paid public servants who are, the ones I know are already have a caseload that would boggle any lawyer's mind, but this really presents another extra workload for them.
Yeah, they're under-resourced already, you know, so I definitely think that this is probably going to go to the Supreme Court because I think they need to just resolve this issue once and for all.
That's where it's going to probably wind up. All right, Ed Pizzoli, let me ask you to get us started here on the President's Advisory Commission on Election Integrity. The President, Trump, has said for a long time that 2 to 3 million people who were illegal aliens in this country voted in the November election, November of 16. And he has promised to appoint a commission. Now the commission has been appointed, and Secretary of State Ken Detzner of Florida has said, okay, we'll give this commission the information that's already a matter of public record. Was that the reasonable thing to do?
It was, because the Secretary of State he's bound by the law in Florida as to what he can provide. No matter, I mean, we've heard this cry sometimes from the media as an example, we want to see everything, but there are some boundaries as far as privacy issues about what can be shown. So as an example, you don't give addresses out to judges, you know, where judges live, some of the law enforcement officers, some of those things. Yeah. So he is bound by Florida law as to what he can and can't provide. And so regardless of the request from the federal government, he still has to comply with his charge.
But Paz, what really bothers me though is that we have an election commission, voter fraud commission, and our president can't even admit that we've had issues with meddling with our democracy. Right? It just seems a little bit ironic that we can't have that commission, and he can't admit in Hamburg.
I think he's admitted. Look, I think he's admitted that there were some issues. The question is, what were they? There was no voting count issues or any of that stuff. But let's understand this. Look, I had experience in the 2000 recount, and we saw abuses inside of that process, and those abuses have continued. The Florida legislature, made a big stand about how they were going to fund and how local governments got to count votes. Remember, we have 67 counties with different counting systems and everything, but those chads were a real problem, and people were abused. Look, people were abusive. Here's the idea. Here's the abuse.
What abuse?
Here's the abuse. The abuse is that your vote should count as much as mine. One person, one vote. We live by that standard. That's a real important standard.
Of course.
When you have people who are otherwise ineligible to vote voting, that means it dilutes your vote and mine.
But there was really no evidence of that.
Yeah, where is the
There's
evidence
actually,
of that?
no, with all due respect, there was evidence of that.
What?
I've seen the evidence, people voting twice in 2 different states, as an example.
Where?
Still waiting for it.
In 2012, Governor Rick Scott ordered a review of all voter rolls in the state of Florida, and in the process, hundreds of qualified voters were thrown off the rolls. In the end, out of what, 11.5 million voters at that time, 85 were determined not to be eligible to vote.
You have a right to vote, and that should be protected. Your right and my right must be protected. However, that value of that vote also must be protected. So you cannot have people who are otherwise ineligible to vote, whether they're not citizens of the United States or for whatever other reason they're
live
ineligible.
In New York, and they also vote here.
Right.
All right, everybody, hold your thoughts. We got to take a break here. We'll be right back. Hold on. Live in our studio this Sunday morning, a very lively roundtable. And ladies and gentlemen, let's move on, if we can, to a very, I think, positive development. Ed Pizzoli in Caracas yesterday, Leopoldo Lopez, a mayor of a Caracas suburb, but the opposite political leader of the opposition, has been in jail on trumped-up charges for more than 3 years. Finally, he was allowed to go home under house arrest. What do you think this means?
I'm hoping it means a change for the good. I mean, you know, political opposition, as much as we like to argue and tangle it up, and you and I especially, right? I enjoy it. No, I enjoy it because it ultimately moves our country, in a manner of speaking, in the right direction, where everybody has a voice. There, for so long, under that socialist yoke of totalitarianism, they have basically put him in jail and silenced the opposition, and now he's out. The reason why they let him out, according to them, was because he had health reasons, although he looked mighty fine to me.
Yeah, the video we showed out of Caracas last night, he looked very healthy, standing on the roof of his house.
You know, I think that we've moved past the tipping point in Venezuela. You know, I think that even with the Caribbean region not supporting, you know, the recent sanctions, and the Pope is trying to get involved, you know, Venezuela has really gone past a point where they really, both the opposition and the government, needs to get to the table to resolve some of these political issues that they have.
You know what I can't help but think, and call this just people who are veterans of Cuba coverage, who know that a government will do things for the optics of it when the pressure gets too much. Might this be one of those times?
And that's what I think this is. It's PR for Maduro. I mean, I don't know that it will work, but he has to hang on something.
I mean, great for Lopez and his family. Yes.
Well, for Lopez and his family,
and
but
his
for the others, but also for the others. Hey, we let him go, even though he has these health issues. We're letting him out.
It's not going to quiet the opposition.
Well,
it's going to raise the thermometer.
It's not going to quiet it, and it's not going to feed anybody who's starving, and it's not going to provide diapers on shelves for babies, and it's not going to provide milk to children.
And the inflation is not going to go down. No.
But there is a vote coming up in which people will participate. However much their votes will count, there will be a
but what is not coming up is a presidential election, which is what the opposition has called for, and Maduro has not yet called that. So we'll see.
When you have an all-powerful government. So for those of us who wish a bigger government here, we should look down to Venezuela, because there is
there's no analogy.
There is. You cannot have abuses in government either way, whether it's here or in Venezuela
of course
or in
you
Cuba.
Can't have abuses, but I don't think the government of the United States, state of Florida, is analogous to what they've got going in Venezuela.
If you ask Cubans, when Castro came aboard, whether they believed that would happen, and then we'd be sitting here 50 years later with such a terrible state in that country, I would make you a bet that they'd all say, I could never imagine that have happened then. So be careful what you wish for. That's why it's important that we protect our civil liberties here.
All right, let's move on to another civil liberties. Well, I want to raise the subject of medical marijuana because John Morgan, the personal injury lawyer from Orlando this week, went to court, and he is suing the state of Florida and the legislature for not saying that medical marijuana can be smokable. And Andrea, I mean, for goodness sake, when people, 71% of the voters said,
the people have said this is what we want. So why is the legislature meddling in this, making changes that don't need to be made? We said what we wanted, or the voters said what they wanted. So why even go there?
They're playing with fire. In fact, they're playing with smoke. Listen, the fact is that you know the delivery methods of medical marijuana, those people who suffer from debilitating diseases, we're all healthy here. Folks need the options for their own treatment. Smoking isn't not impacting a delivery method. You know, it's one of the best delivery methods, in fact.
One of the fastest.
John Morgan is going to win this. They're picking a bad fight with a person right now in terms of potentially having something on the general election ballot. So they need to leave this one alone.
Because he's going to win, isn't he? I mean, Ed, I think Mr. Morgan probably
has a good suit.
Has a good case, doesn't he?
Probably has a good suit, and I think that but it's interesting. Earlier in the earlier segment, you talked about opioid abuse. and now we're talking about medical marijuana. And the legislature is taking it slow about how they open up medical marijuana to those now, for those in need. That becomes very frustrating. I know several people who have children who desperately need, the oil of a medical marijuana, and they have to go to different places to get it. That is a shame, and we need to address that.
And again, the
but
policymakers,
it still needs to go
meddling.
slow, because think about what the issue is with opioids. I just balanced that out for purpose of the argument.
I'm glad we're having a public health discussion with regards to everything that impacts each other, because this is right in the middle of the debate, whether we have the right funding for prevention and helping people to find the treatment that they need.
But this is really, on that, the 75 words in that constitutional amendment that went on the ballot, that 70-something percent of the people,
it's very clear.
Had nothing to say delivery method. I think John Morgan has a really good point in saying people assumed that it was all delivery methods, and you can't take back one of them.
But like most constitutional amendments, there's a lot left to be filled in,
course.
and the job of filling that in is the state legislature.
Right.
Well, that's
and the legislature doesn't like voters telling them what should be and what should not be in the Constitution. We all know that. Well, thank you all for coming in. A great roundtable discussion.
As always.
Still to come, my personal perspective about crimes involving, yes, cruelty to animals.